the Great Food Seizure, how ESG and traceability threaten farms. They have put together such a great article which explains to us the agenda of bird flu and how it's all coming together and what it's for. Hello, Peter Merrick. Hello, Adrian Spitters. The traceability, the digital fence around farming.
It's when you take the 37,000 foot level and look at all of these different programs and see how they're interconnected and are becoming interconnected, that you see the dystopian nature of what's being, like that net that's being put around our freedoms, the farm's ability to farm, the control mechanism, the control net that is being put in place. And the reason most people don't see this coming is they're looking at, okay, traceability, or they're looking at this, or they're looking at that, they're looking at Bill 7, but they're all interconnected. I first became involved in traceability back in 2016, 2017, when I was a chapter chair of an organization called Canadian Association of Farm Advisors, and that was the Fraser Valley chapter chair. And we would host chapter events where we brought PwC in because they were one of the members of the organization, which is a Canadian-wide organization. I just happened to be the chapter chair. We would bring them in to talk about traceability. And I was an advocate for PwC in bringing this program out and talking to farmers about the importance of food safety, because they talked about food safety. What I didn't know at that time, this was a bigger net. I didn't understand. All this stuff started making sense to me. One of the meetings, what I thought was interesting, and I didn't make the connection, and it's to do with the nanoparticles, because we are going to be able to trace everything. This one death that was presenting at this one event was saying that we're able to now track a head of lettuce to the square foot in the field where it came from. I said, how's that possible? We spray the crop with nanoparticles, and those particles can be identified. And I'm going, that's crazy. Didn't think about it.
And that was way back before COVID when you were asleep.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we're talking, these people are globalists. They're pushing an agenda and they're cheap. These people at these town councils are in these organizations, like young global influencers, or not leaders, influencers. Yeah. You know, they're all over the Canadian government, and their orders are not coming from Ottawa.
As soon as the CFIA lawyer said, well, Justice, we have to do this because we're following the rules of these global organizations where it's 100% stamping out, mean 100% murder and slaughter of healthy, innocent animals. Basically, this lawyer just said, it's not our fault. We're following the rules of this group. And if we don't follow the rules of this global group, because we've signed up to be part of this group, then economically, it will be a disaster for us if we don't follow these rules that do not come from Canada. So it's already happened. And that's why
they're building
trade agreements. They tie you down to rules and regulations that do not benefit your own country.
Well, one of the things that I think about is how people are so complicit. I'm doing this because I want to keep my job. I'm doing this because I can't make money. They don't understand they are actually participating in building the prison.
One of the things I forgot to put in this article, and it was talking to a farmer at one of the presentations, is he's a smaller chicken farmer. He says, I can't keep up with all of the reporting that's required with this new traceability program. It's like we are spending more time doing paperwork than managing our farm. Now, for a big conglomerate that owns multiple farms and has a lot of staff, it's an evil expense, but it's manageable. Whereas a small family farm, they are overwhelmed with all the reporting required just to keep their quota and to be able to ship. It's really the larger multinational corporations that are getting into farming. They're basically trying to bankrupt the small farmers so that they can take over, just getting rid of the competition and scooping it up. They're all getting into it, and they're just making life difficult.
They're using just the worst tactics with these farmers. Remote and automated shutdowns of farms. algorithm-driven culling and quarantine orders, and real-time compliance scoring integrated with climate goals.
This is where Carney comes in. Mr. Climate.
Yep. So CFIA has become a key federal enforcer of this transformation. I love how you wrote about how CFIA's role has totally expanded now.
Yep.
It now serves as the frontline implementer of seizure and destruction powers, often preemptively. They can enter farms without a warrant, mandate the destruction of animals based on definitely questionable results that cannot be challenged.
They don't just do accounting anymore. They're business consultants, farm consultants, and they partnered up through the pandemic. They were members of the WEF, but then a recent article says they're no longer a key partner, but they're still pushing this agenda. They've taken a step back a little bit, maybe because of the heat they've been getting, but they're very much still involved. They are the point firm and the main firm that's responsible for building this out.
One of the things that, wake up call for me was most of the large firms I know in Toronto got huge contracts in October of 2019.
I see a lot of stuff in this article, basically an agenda on two fronts. One is it's just so much. The older farmer who's maybe 55 has had this farm in his family for 3 generations goes, you know what? This is too much. I can't do this carbon tracking tools, traceability for my carbon footprint, this net zero, the way they come in and just cull the animals, all the rules, all the taxes.
What about the financing? What about the ability to refinance your farm because you don't meet your net zero requirements?
Yeah, they're just taking out the small guy, and people don't see it as a drip, drip, drip until we really do have
Chinese torture.
They targeted small business owners throughout Canada. Why would you do that? Because if you want to implement tyranny, you have to get rid of people who are self-sufficient. So they were attacking these people. So they make it so prohibitive. And they're able to now just make these big corporations. Now, one of the big things we really address it in the book, It Starts with Gold, is that these large organizations, they are owned by the same people. And just to give context, you go buy Pepsi, you buy Coca-Cola, it's the same people or entities that own it. These are the actual companies. And this man is the one who implemented the infrastructure that was starting to fall. So he had to come from back behind the curtain to take over. I see it happening in every single industry, as Adrian pointed out. Financial, small business, farming.
They're getting their grip on our food system. They're squeezing out the farmers to get complete control. And we're just getting used to the knock on the door, do what you're told, or they will not give you any money at all for what they did. Carbon scoring of farms based on satellite, drone, and traceability data, ESG-based lending criteria, and compliance-linked insurance. They've got them by the balls.
And it's primarily is because they're afraid of all these things that can come down to stop them from farming. They're afraid of speaking out.
It's called communism.
So they're going to force you through the banks and through the insurance companies to comply.
Can I just bring back to Kearney? $130 trillion worth of the world's money managers agreed to this. So if they can't do it through the government, they'll do it through what else they own. Anybody who goes against the agenda is gotten rid of.
Yep. And that's why they call it climate finance. The real term. They're tying climate and finance and compliance to the ESG mandates and the carbon and net zero. It's all part of it.
And that's why nothing makes sense. These systems are being absorbed into an international data architecture that goes far beyond public health. Let's talk about them taking out the small farmer, because this is what's happening. These expenses can be prohibitive for small and medium-sized farms. And this mass culling of chickens is taking out some small farms as well. So everything's getting, conglomerated into the big guy, which is part of this whole thing.
I was doing the financials for CTV regularly. And there were things that did not make sense to me. I have a good friend of mine, and he's a producer at the National. And he said something to me in 2014, 15. And he said, Peter, you don't understand. Canada is changing, like the zeitgeist, just the way that the news is being presented. All this, like there's an agenda. And he was talking about like how there were just a few people who were part of the club who they're the ones who are shaping the narrative because an agenda is at foot. The Trudeau government was making small business people who had sacrificed their lives sound like criminals. I dealt with a lot of computer consultants, and this is very relevant to what we're talking about. A lot of computer consultants, and they were getting these incredible contracts, making anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million.
Peter was saying, how did we get here? Look at where we're at. Here is where we're at. Canada's hidden farm crisis, how CFIA's disease response protocol is destroying livelihoods and going unchecked by Shirley Gertin on Substack. No, nothing. That's it. No proof. And then they just say, we're killing them all. And you know what? The aftermath. Did you guys know the farmers left to clean up the mess alone? The CFIA does not assist with decontamination or cleanup. The responsibility and the cost falls entirely on the farmer, caught in a web of bureaucracy and delays. Even when compensation is issued, it does not cover future lost revenue, eggs, meat, breeding stock. CFIA ordered cleaning and disinfection, loss of genetic material or rare breeding stock, costs associated with restocking and downtime, emotional and psychological distress, loss of market share and reputation, infrastructure damage due to harsh decontamination processes, the end of agricultural sovereignty, or a new beginning. This is not about safety, and that's why nothing makes sense right now. It is not about sustainability. It is about control. The fusion of traceability, ESG metrics, programmable finance is redefining what it means to own and operate a farm. All of this stuff is just drip, drip, drip right now. It's all coming in slowly.
And unless you take a 37,000 foot view of all these different programs that are slowly merging together, you don't see the big picture.
It's the agenda for the 21st century, and it's broken into like 15-year parts.
Well, if you go to itstartswithgold.com, you can get access to the book and then all of the articles and blogs you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's so important that we talk about what's happening with our farms right now. That was the point of this interview. And you guys really did a good job of just laying out what's actually happening for these poor, poor farmers, whether it's chickens, cows, ostriches, whatever it is. They are going through a lot right now. And it's time we expose what the agenda and the Fed are doing to our poor farmers.